It was the Battle of John Lewis. The Prime Minister went out of his way to insist a store long considered a bellwether of Middle Britain was not beneath him.
There's one thing I object to in this whole farrago of nonsense. I love John Lewis.
And the Labour leader took to trolling him by staging a photo call in the John Lewis wallpaper department. On one level, it was all very silly, but there is some real politics here. Boris Johnson can't afford to seem out of touch, and John Lewis customers are the kind of voters the Labour Party needs to win back. Also on News at 10 tonight. The harrowing first-hand accounts of the doctors in India struggling to cope with the onslaught of desperately sick patients.
It is very painful to really see the patients dying, young and old, all are dying. And really it is causing a lot of trouble, a lot of mental torture to us.
BAFTA suspends actor Noel Clarke over allegations of harassment. The drug trials designed to help solve the mystery of long COVID. Joe Biden launches a massive program to stimulate the economy, one of the biggest the United States has ever seen. Festivals are back in Liverpool this weekend at least. And they've hatched some birth news for the falcons in the cathedral spire we featured a few weeks ago.
This is ITV News at 10 with Tom Bradby.
Good evening. If it wasn't so serious, it would almost be funny. The row between the Prime Minister and the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer over the upgrade of the Downing Street flat today became what even Sir Keir called farcical. Mr Johnson said the thing that upset him most was the suggestion that he doesn't like John Lewis or that its style is not good enough for him. I love John Lewis, he said. Later on, Sir Keir offered up a photo opportunity of himself looking through rolls of wallpaper in, you guessed it, a John Lewis store, which was quite funny or a bit pathetic, depending on your point of view. If the row did move forward at all today, it was over accusations of the Prime Minister marking his own homework. He's chosen a new ministerial standards advisor, Lord Geidt, whose findings he can overrule. So is it time in the cash for curtains row for both sides to pull themselves together?
Totally, you've got lots of good stuff here, Rishi.
When the pressure's on and things are tough, you should always be able to rely on your neighbours for support. With questions mounting about the refurbishment of the Prime Minister's flat, the two men who live in Downing Street took a trip to a London school to move the focus elsewhere. But the Prime Minister still won't tell us all the details about how he paid for the renovations.
I don't think there's anything to see here or to worry about. But what we are doing is focusing on the stuff that really matters.
But the Prime Minister's opponents think all the controversy could be easily avoided.
I think this is getting a bit farcical. I think the Prime Minister could actually deal with this very, very quickly. All he's got to do is answer a very simple question, which is who paid initially for the redecoration of your flat?
Farcical, he says, but then in a tongue-in-cheek moment, he paid a visit to John Lewis after allegations the Prime Minister redecorated because he didn't approve of the shop's furniture.
If there's one thing I object to in this whole farrago of nonsense, I love John Lewis.
There are now 3 inquiries into the renovations at the Downing Street flat. One by the Cabinet Secretary Simon Case, another by the new Ministerial Standards Advisor Lord Geidt. The Prime Minister will decide if he wants to listen to the conclusions of those. The third, however, is an independent probe by the Electoral Commission. It's looking into Tory party donations and has the power to question Boris Johnson and his fiancée, Carrie Symonds. It can also demand the paper trail from Conservative HQ. And if it finds any wrongdoing, it can issue fines, investigate the Prime Minister personally, and even pass on files to the police.
The Commission can take action against individuals, not just parties. So the power to fine is the same. And then over and above that, the Commission can go to court to ask the court to order the recipient of the donation to give up a sum equivalent to the donation.
Today at the Church Street Market in London, we asked people what they thought about the refurbishments.
I'm not that bothered about Boris Johnson's taste in furniture and whether he likes John Lewis's or what. The problem is not being honest about how he paid for it.
Are you concerned about the investigations into Boris Johnson?
Not really. Not really. I guess it's just one of those perks.
There's a lot of families that went without, and wallpaper would have been the last thing on their mind.
It's a story that has rumbled on for some time and is likely to keep cropping up until all the remaining questions have been answered. Shihab Khan, News at 10, Westminster.
And Robert is, of course, here to talk about all this, the battle for John Lewis. On one level, incredibly silly. On another level, I suppose, you know, this is a totem of Middle Britain. Both sides can't be seen to be dissing it, really.
It's partly about that. It's also partly about making this story meaningful for millions of us because it is quite complicated. So I thought what I would actually do is just take us back to first principles.
Yeah.
Prime ministers get £30,000 a year to spend on how they decorate their home above Downing Street. Prime Minister wanted to redecorate but decided £30,000 a year wasn't enough. As long ago as last February, he thought about asking donors to pay some additional money to give him the sort of swanky sort of furnishings that he wanted. The chairman of the Tory party said, well, borrow the money. It's not really an appropriate use of Tory party funds. He wouldn't give up. He then looked at what happens in America, where they have these trusts that are set up, which donors contribute to. Again, he couldn't make the trust work. But he'd got the decorators in, bills had run up, the Cabinet Office ultimately paid tens of thousands of pounds. Cabinet Officer said, you've paid way more than the amount you're allowed to spend. He didn't have the money. He went to the Tory party. The Tory party repaid. That was effectively a loan to the Prime Minister. He realised that a loan for the Tory party would look very odd. So comparatively recently, he paid it back. Now, he says he's done nothing wrong. I think I would make 2 points about that. One is, here at ITV, they tell me, if I want to get home at night, I can take a Prius. If I was swanning around at ITV's expense in a Rolls Royce, they would have something to say about that. They would say, you're breaking our policy. Some would say that is what the Prime Minister has been doing. Second point, although he says he's done nothing wrong, he won't tell us. I mean, I've just explained to you what I think happened. He won't confirm any of that. He won't actually tell us what's gone wrong. And I think the reason this all feels dodgy to so many people is he won't spell out the detail of what actually happened.
OK, not yet at least. Let's see. For now, thank you very much indeed. Now, there is no doubting the suffering of COVID patients in India's hospitals. Today, we have also been hearing what the doctors trying to treat them are up against. From inside their overcrowded wards, they have talked to us of fighting a war against the virus without the oxygen they need. They talk, too, about feeling scared and helpless themselves. And yet, in the middle of this crisis, some aspects of everyday life do continue. Elections are going ahead, so too cricket, and even some United Nations help is being turned away.
A doctor, exhausted and beaten by COVID. So too an entire health service. We are inside a public hospital in Delhi, the capital of a wealthy nation, where among the many medicines and remedies in short supply is hope.
We all are fighting a war and we are all a part of it.
We asked those closest to the crisis to keep a diary. Theirs are terrifying testimonies.
The world around us is filled with grief. News of lack of oxygen, lack of beds, lack of medications, lack of a proper place to give a good funeral to your loved ones. It's tragic.
It is very painful to really see the patients dying, young and old, all are dying. And really it is causing a lot of trouble, a lot of mental torture to us.
I at least try to sit at their bedside, making them, making it a little easier for them to pass away with someone next to them.
To the parent or a partner of a 32-year-old man or a woman that their partner, their child is no more is a pain that's really numbing.
And for every patient who secures a bed, there are many, like Mustafa Ansari, who suffer at home. He's now stuck outside a hospital in Patna, guarded by police who turn people away. His nephew tells us they've driven 40 miles. We've been here for 2 hours, he says. No doctor has come. I don't know where else to go. Delhi is now in lockdown, and yet elsewhere, elections went ahead today. And rallies like this by the governing party have been blamed for spreading the virus. Even so, India's rulers reject the twin accusation of complacency and complicity.
We did not expect at different levels the severity and the extent of the endemic, and therefore there are certain issues, gaps which could have been filled, but there are certain important initiatives which have helped India to tide over this crisis also.
In Mumbai, an emergency hospital has opened. More than 2,000 beds. It's vast in size, yet dwarfed by the scale of the emergency, say those dealing with it every minute of every day.
There is death everywhere. The patients and the doctors treating them, we both feel the system has abandoned us.
John Ray, News at 10.
Now, if you've just been watching Viewpoint, you'll know its star is Noel Clarke. He's been playing DC Martin Young. Tonight, news is breaking that the actor who won the prestigious BAFTA award for Outstanding British Contribution to Cinema earlier this month is alleged by a number of women to have bullied and sexually harassed them. Allegations he denies, and Neil is here to talk about all this. It's obviously a breaking story tonight. What do we know?
A lot happening in the last hour. As you say, nearly 3 weeks since we saw the actor Noel Clarke receive his BAFTA award for Outstanding British Contribution to Cinema, best known for appearing in Doctor Who and co-creating the Hood trilogy, and also, as you say, seen earlier tonight on that ITV drama Viewpoint. Tonight, BAFTA has said it's suspending his award and membership until further notice following allegations of misconduct. It comes after The Guardian says it's spoken to 20 women who accused the actor of sexual harassment and inappropriate behaviour. Now, Noel Clarke has denied all the allegations. In a statement, he has said, in a 20-year career, I have put inclusivity and diversity at the forefront of my work and never had a complaint made against me. If anyone who has worked with me has ever felt uncomfortable or disrespected, I sincerely apologise. I vehemently deny any sexual misconduct or wrongdoing and intend to defend myself against these false allegations. Now, Tom, The Guardian claims that BAFTA was informed about the existence of several of these allegations against Noel Clarke 13 days before the ceremony. They report that BAFTA did not dispute receiving the allegations, but say BAFTA says it was provided with no evidence that would allow it to investigate. We've put those specific claims to BAFTA tonight, and they replied, we have no further comment at this time.
OK, Neil, thank you very much indeed. Now, a year ago, we were only starting to learn about what we now know of as long COVID, recurring symptoms months on. Recent stats show almost 1 in 3 COVID patients who ended up in hospital have to go back within 6 months. 1 in 8, very sadly, die in 6 months too. So now researchers are looking for volunteers among patients who've left hospital that they can try out different drugs on. The aim is to find out which ones stop the patients needing to be readmitted.
Hey Rob, you ready to go for a walk? Excellent. Right, we'll just get your oxygen sorted. Off we go. That's it. Try and keep your head up if you can. That's it. Look ahead.
He is not an elderly man, nor is he in the last days of his life. Rob Orton is a 48-year-old invalid, ravaged so badly by a virus, he's had to learn to walk and talk again.
Rob, this is amazing.
Thank you.
Look at you. How are you feeling?
I'm good, thank you.
Are you pleased with his progress?
You can't say how pleased I am. My whole team is the whole of intensive care.
I met Rob in intensive care. He had a tracheotomy, having just come off a ventilator. COVID kept him there for 5 months.
What do you miss most? Has this been hard? You miss them?
The disease has left him with very damaged lungs. He's had numerous infections and still can't eat.
We'll get the stoma nurse to come and have a look. We'll change the dressing.
The road to recovery is complicated.
Do you think life will ever be normal, whatever that is, again?
No. Not compared to what it was before, no. The doctors were saying you'd be on the ventilator for 3 days, you'd be home in a week's time. 6 months down the trot, I'm still here. So nobody, even the doctors, the professionals, nobody knows where this disease could lead.
For many, it leads straight back into hospital. ONS data suggests 29% of patients hospitalised with COVID are readmitted within 6 months. 12% die within the same period. 2 drugs, a blood thinner, a Pixaban and a statin, atorvastatin, will be trialled on patients to help cut those figures. But everything right now is experimental.
When you look at the myriad of symptoms that people present with, it can be, it's quite varied, from very, very minor things to being significantly disabled. And obviously these patients will come back and need more help.
And of course, we're sort of only just beginning to see the effect of that.
Absolutely.
William, can you get the milk up for me, please?
This is Rob's beloved family he so misses. Home life has had to continue. He will be part of that very soon, but their future is uncertain.
It's not just a case of catch COVID, go to hospital, get better, go home. It doesn't work like that. There's scarring on his lungs, so that's going to affect his chest for the rest of his life. He can't eat, so he's peg fed. And wherever you've got a hole in the body, that's a possible infection.
Neither Rob nor his wife were expecting his physical or mental recovery to take so long, but both are determined not to let his demons beat him.
And Emily's here to talk about all this. Listen, if we wind back to both of us sitting here a year ago, there was a lot of sort of scepticism really about whether vaccines were going to work, and a lot of focus on treatments, which seemed the way of getting out of this crisis. And of course, you know, vaccines did work, and that's great, but not everyone can take it. It doesn't work on everyone. So where are we on treatments? We don't seem to have made much progress on that.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. The development of the vaccine, I suppose, completely trumped the development of treatments. We still only have 2 real treatments for seriously ill COVID patients in hospital: dexamethasone, which is a steroid, and tocilizumab, which is an anti-inflammatory drug for arthritis. So hundreds of potential treatment options are still being looked at, either drugs we already have, or obviously scientists are looking for new drugs. Aspirin, for instance, is being trialled at the moment to see if it can reduce blood clotting in COVID patients. We should get the results of that in a couple of weeks' time. Regeneron, the biotech company, is trialling a cocktail of antibody drugs which would be given to COVID patients right at the beginning of their infection and would hopefully boost their immune system and stop the development of the disease. And then, of course, there are all the antiviral treatments that are being tested. Many of those are treatments we already have for other viruses, like the flu virus, but Pfizer are also trialling a new antiviral treatment. So quite obviously there's a necessity, as you say. We need treatments because the vaccine doesn't work for everybody. So I think there's real hope that new treatments will now start to come through. The government here has a pledge, an ambition to find 2 antiviral treatments by autumn that we can all take at home. Now, whether the science matches that ambition, we'll just have to wait and see, I think.
OK, fascinating, though. Thank you very much indeed. Now the vaccine call-up has gone out to 42-year-olds. It was the turn of the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, to get his first dose. The process he went through was like 34 million before him, with one difference. The man in the mask administering his AstraZeneca jab was none other than Jonathan Van Tam, the Deputy Chief Medical Officer for England. Now, walk along any high street or through any town centre and the empty shops are plain to see. But just how bad have things got? Well, the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, whose figures actually shape Bank of England policies, have been asking their members. In the last year, they reported that empty retail space was at its highest since 1999. They project a fall in retail rents of 10% over the year ahead. And businesses are expected to scale back office space by an average of 12%.
On shopping parades across Glasgow, new gaps have appeared during lockdown. This is a city where old gaps still need filling. BHS went bust 5 years ago. Even on Buchanan Street, which is about as prime as retail gets, people have returned to find almost 1 in every 6 shops is empty. It's unprecedented.
I think this space is ideal for another jeweller, accessories, cosmetics.
At the bottom of Buchanan Street, John Minguez is now getting calls about this shop, which has been empty for over a year. He's confident he'll let it. The landlord has dropped the rent by half.
I think the key point to note is that the big cities in the UK, like Glasgow, are resilient cities. They've got a fantastic mixed-use offering, and they're actually well placed to come out of this. It's the smaller towns that are under much more pressure going forward.
Are there too many shops? Is it as simple as that?
There are far too many shops in a lot of towns. I think we look at towns now where we see 30 to 40% too many shops in some of these towns, and that market's not coming back.
This place means so much to us. It's the best job any of us have ever had.
Away from the city centre, the owners of the Lucky Sparrow Games Cafe have called it a day. Sadie has closed her business but still holds a 10-year lease and will continue to pay rent to her landlord until she finds someone to take it on.
Small businesses are going to suffer much more. It's poor people and people who are trying to run small independent businesses who are being hurt by COVID. Rich people and corporations and landlords, they're not bothered.
Like Glasgow, London has been hit hard by lockdown and social distancing. The tourists have vanished, the commuters have started to trickle back. This cobbler's reopened 3 weeks ago. Last week they took £200. Before COVID, they were taking £6,000 a week. The owner let one of his shops go during lockdown, but thinks his business will now pull through.
I think the city is going to be the last place that gets back to normal. You know, people are coming back in dribs and drabs, but yeah, we're thinking hopefully by the winter, if we're somewhere up to breaking even, that'd be a success.
Towns and cities in the northeast of England have the highest shop vacancy rates. In Middlesbrough, the local authority's trying to do something about it with the help of a lot of central government money. Last summer, Middlesbrough Council paid £1 million for the House of Fraser building. They're currently allowing Mike Ashley's company to use it rent-free, but within months of saving one department store, another announced it was closing. Debenhams shuts its doors for good in a few weeks' time, leaving behind a lot of space that needs filling.
So that building there that's got our logo on there.
Middlesbrough's mayor is undaunted. He says £50 million of public money will be spent attracting people back into the centre.
We're going to see the deck reshuffled of shops. We're going to see fewer shopping centres over time, but loads more leisure, loads more offices, loads more homes.
Come on, name drop here. Who have you got to come in?
I will not name drop today, but you come back in 3 weeks.
Have you got people?
Yeah, absolutely. You come back in 3 weeks, you will be amazed.
The High Street was struggling long before coronavirus arrived. Spending has been moving online for years. Lockdown turned a gentle decline into a short, sharp kill. In Middlesbrough, in communities everywhere, there's an urgent need for reinvention. John Hills, News at 10 in Middlesbrough.
Well, let's move on to a new economic deal in the United States. Joe Biden was always going to be a different president to Donald Trump in style, but now we know in economic policy too. In a speech to mark his first 100 days in the White House, he announced a huge spending program paid for by higher taxes.
Madam Speaker, the President of the United States.
It was a moment in history as much for what it looked like as for what it sounded like. The pandemic delivered for the first time a masked president in front of a much depleted audience.
Madam Speaker, Madam Vice President.
Progress delivered 2 women to the seats behind a president for the first time.
No president has ever said those words from this podium. No president has ever said those words, and it's about time.
This was a moment to speak directly to the American people, to assess and project we, not I, very much at the heart of his promise of hope for the nation. An ambitious spending plan to target middle-class America.
After 100 days of rescue and renewal, America is ready for a takeoff, in my view. We're working again, dreaming again, discovering again, and leading the world again.
$4 trillion of spend was not something Republicans were going to engage in.
So,
the president chose to answer the questions they would likely ask.
How do we pay for my jobs and family plan? It's time for corporate America and the wealthiest 1% of Americans to just begin to pay their fair share. Just their fair share.
America's social ills, along with immigration, race and poverty, were all on his to-do list. So what do those to whom he speaks make of his words?
Some things have been promising, but there's still a lot of work to be done, and hopefully, politically, he can navigate what needs to be done for the country.
Thumbs up, the speech last night was amazing.
He's doing what we think big government should do, a democratic process that lifts everyone up. It's inspiring.
He still needs to do a lot of work because he's not quite where he needs to be on keeping his promises. A lot of people are paying attention.
The president finished his address thanking the nation for its patience. He certainly has the patience of Democrats, but not Republicans. And if he is to make any of the changes he hopes for, he'll need their support now and in the future. Emma Murphy, News at 10, Washington.
Back here, our esteemed and much-loved ITN colleague Jon Snow signalled the end of a broadcasting era today. He is giving up the presenter's perch on Channel 4 News.
The West's obsession with trying to win the release of the hostages has totally...
Those with long memories will remember him cutting his teeth on News at 10 in the 70s with reports like this one from Iran. Now, believe it or not, he's in his 70s and has been presenting the programme for 32 years. But he says he won't be cutting his ties with the channel, at least until the end of the year, not even those fluorescent multicoloured ones. Congratulations and good luck to him. We will miss him. Now, in the music-mad city of Liverpool, thousands of lucky people are getting excited over the bank holiday weekend. There are going to be outdoor live music events. Yes, there are. The first after all these months. Those who get tickets won't even have to wear a mask or socially distance. So what's going on? You might call it experimental music.
On this vast Victorian park in Liverpool rest the hopes of British festival goers. Could the event being staged here on Sunday lead to live music's big comeback?
I'm gonna be okay. Don't worry, 'cause I know you.
The Liverpudlian singer who will be first on stage at Sefton Park is simply overwhelmed at the prospect.
I'm worried I'm going to cry. I'm worried I'm just going to cry for the first 5 minutes, but I'm going to try not to and just keep it together, but it's going to be super emotional.
There is some optimism. Organisers of this concert in Barcelona last month say it resulted in no significant COVID outbreak afterwards. Before the pandemic, in Britain, live music was a booming billion-pound industry. Now it's hoped by testing fans before they arrive and asking them to do the same afterwards, events can restart. So there'll be 5,000 fans in Liverpool on Sunday, but like in Barcelona, they won't be wearing masks.
So the stage is being built and this venue is getting ready to receive thousands of fans. And the significance of this event is that the organisers intend it to be exactly like the real deal.
This will be an audience that will be going for it as though coronavirus had never happened. They'll be singing, they'll be dancing, they'll be having pints of beer, they'll be jumping up and down, they'll be moshing, they'll be coming over the barrier. And that's what we want them to do. We want them to behave you know, without restriction.
The headline act, Blossoms, had their tour postponed last year. Now they are relieved to have a concert to rehearse for.
I think it's an important step to getting live music back on its feet. So
Weirdly, that was like an afterthought, wasn't it? Like getting asked to do it, we were like, yes, what, do a gig, what? And then afterwards, sort of step back and oh God, it's going to be quite like...
Yeah, it's only as we've approached and got closer and we're speaking to people, it's like, are you nervous? Like, you know, it's a big monumentous occasion and you're like, oh yeah, we were just looking forward to playing live.
Many will be waiting and watching to see if British festivals can indeed flourish again. Nina Nanar, News at 10 in Liverpool.
Finally, a birth announcement. 2 new friends of News at 10 have become parents. 3 weeks ago, we reported on the rare peregrine falcons who live high above the streets of Wakefield in West Yorkshire on top of the city's cathedral. 2 of the 4 eggs they've been sitting on have now definitely hatched. The chicks are tucked underneath mum tonight. The 3rd has been breaking through its shell this evening. Last time we reported on the falcons, there was a big spike in the numbers looking at the cathedral's webcam. Appropriate, really, for a cathedral spire. Boom, boom. That's it. Good night. Thanks very much for watching.